chapter 3, and it begins on page 73. I'm going to read aloud a little bit. We're going to answer some questions together, and then I'll cut you loose to answer some questions on your own, although on your own means that you can work together on those answers with each other. So I mentioned before that we're going into this part of the book that of the logical argument that comprises the book. Is the point being made in the next 5 chapters is it is true that the theistic God exists. This is evidenced by the beginning of the universe, the design of the universe, and the anthropic principle, the design of life, and the moral law. So that will be chapters 3 through 7. You'll have another big test after chapter 7, but it's going to take us the lion's share of the rest of the semester to go through this. So this will take quite a bit of time. So chapter 3 is entitled, "In the Beginning There Was a Great Surge." You'll find out later what that means. It's an acronym. And this is a quote from Albert Einstein. He said this: "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." By lame, he doesn't mean stupid, right? The term, the way you guys use lame, literally means incapacitated or worthless or something like that. It means it can't exist. So science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. Irritating facts. It was 1916, and Albert Einstein didn't like where his calculations were leading him. If his theory of general relativity was true, it meant that the universe was not eternal, but had a beginning. Einstein's calculations indeed were revealing a definite beginning to all time, all matter, and all space. This flew in the face of his belief that the universe was static and eternal, unchanging and eternal. Einstein later called his discovery irritating. He wanted the universe to be self-existent, not reliant, not relying on any outside cause, because the universe appeared to be one giant effect. So it looked like the universe was created. It looked like there was a cause behind it, but he didn't want it to be that way. In fact, Einstein so disliked the implications of general relativity that there is a beginner that started the universe. A theory that is now proven, in fact, Einstein so disliked the implications of general relativity, a theory that is now proven accurate to 5 decimal places, that he introduced a cosmological constant, which some have since called a fudge factor, into his equation in order to show that the universe is static, unchanging, and to avoid an absolute beginning, eternal. But Einstein's fudge factor didn't fudge for long. In 1919, British cosmologist Arthur Eddington, himself an atheist, conducted an experiment during a solar eclipse which confirmed that general relativity was indeed true. The universe wasn't static, unchanging, but it had a beginning. Like Einstein, Eddington wasn't happy with the implications. He later wrote, philosophically, the notion of a beginning of the present order, the notion of a beginning for the universe is repugnant to me, is like noxious to me. He absolutely did not want that to be true. I should like to find a genuine loophole. I'd like to find a genuine way to escape it. By 1922, Russian mathematician Alexander Friedmann had officially exposed Einstein's fudge factor as an algebraic error. Incredibly, in his quest to avoid a beginning, the great Einstein had divided by 0, something even schoolchildren know is a no-no. Meanwhile, Dutch astronomer Wilhelm de Sitter had found that general relativity required the universe to be expanded. And in 1927, the expanding of the universe was actually observed by astronomer Edwin Hubble, namesake for the Space Telescope. Looking through the 100-inch telescope at California's Mount Wilson, observatory, Hubble discovered a red shift in the light from every observable galaxy, which meant that those galaxies were moving away from us. In other words, general relativity was again confirmed. The universe appears to be expanding from a single point in the distant past. And note that that's what the science and the math tell us. It's not the Bible that's telling us that, although it is consistent with the Bible story, that God made the universe out of nothing. He spoke it into creation. Science and the math is saying the same thing, except for they don't use God. Looking through the, in 1929, Einstein made a pilgrimage to Mount Wilson to look through Hubble's telescope for himself. What he saw was irrefutable. There was no way to argue it away. The observational evidence showed that the universe was indeed expanding, as general relativity had predicted. With his cosmological constant now completely crushed by the weight of the evidence against it, Einstein could no longer support his wish for an eternal universe. He subsequently described the cosmological constant as the greatest blunder of my life, and he redirected his efforts to find the box top to the puzzle of life. Einstein said that he wanted to know how God created the world. I'm not interested in this or that phenomenon, in the spectrum of this or that element. I want to know his thought. The rest are details. Although Einstein said that he believed in a pantheistic God, a God that is the universe, his comments admitting creation and divine thought better describe a theistic God. And as irritating as it may be, his theory of general relativity stands today as one of the strongest lines of evidence for a theistic God. Indeed, general relativity supports what is one of the oldest formal arguments for the existence of a theistic God, the cosmological argument. The cosmological argument, the beginning of the end for atheism. Don't be put off by the technical sounding name. Cosmological comes from the Greek word cosmos, which means world or universe. That is, the cosmological argument is the argument from the beginning of the universe. If the universe had a beginning, then the universe had a cause. In logical form, the argument goes like this. 1. Everything that had a beginning had a cause. 2. The universe had a cause. 3. Therefore, the universe had a cause. As we showed in the last chapter, for an argument to be true, it has to be logically valid, and its premises must be true. This is a valid argument, but are the premises true? Let's take a look at the premises. Premise 1. Everything that had a beginning had a cause is the law of causality. That is a scientific law, which is the fundamental principle of science. Without the law of causality, science is impossible. In fact, Francis Bacon, the father of modern science, said, true knowledge is knowledge by causes. In other words, science is a search for causes. That's what scientists do. They try to discover what caused what. If there's one thing we've observed about the universe, it's that things don't happen without a cause. When a man is driving down the street, a car never appears in front of his car out of nowhere with no driver or no cause. We know many a police officer has heard this, but it's just not true. Now, the closest thing that I can think of is when I was coming out of my youth group one night when I was a senior in high school, and I was getting into my car, and a car with no driver rolled into the front of my car. And I said to someone, well, what would you think if a car with no driver rolled into your car? And she said, rapture. But the parking brake didn't work, and so it started to but it doesn't happen in real life, right? If you're in a car accident, I don't know, it was just there. No, something caused that accident. So, Gotta find the police officer. Yep. There's always a driver or some other cause behind that car appearing. Even the great skeptic, David Hume, could not deny the law of causality. He wrote, I never asserted so absurd a proposition as that something could arise without a cause. In fact, to deny the law of causality is to deny rationality. The very process of rational thinking requires us to put together thoughts, the causes, that result in conclusions, the effects. So if anyone ever tells you he doesn't believe in the law of causality, simply ask that person what caused you to come to that conclusion. Since the law of causality is well established and undeniable, premise one is true. So premise one is everything that had a beginning had a cause. What about premise two? Did the universe have a beginning? If not, then no cause would be needed. If so, then the universe must have had a cause. And so I want to point out here is that even atheist scientists believe this. Even atheist scientists believe that if that in the law of causality, right, that everything that came into being had a cause, and the universe had a beginning. They don't believe it maybe about the everybody believes it. Therefore, the universe had a cause, so it has to have a cause. So this isn't just looking at the Bible and seeing that this is true. This is what scientists believe as well. Even atheistic scientists believe this logical until about the time of Einstein, atheists could comfort themselves with the belief that the universe is eternal and thus did not need a cause. But since then, 5 lines of scientific evidence, have been discovered that prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the universe did indeed have a beginning. And that beginning was what scientists now call the Big Bang. The Big Bang evidence can be easily remembered by the acronym SURGE. So we're going to stop here, kind of an awkward place to stop, but we'll come back to that. That's going to take us a while to go through that acronym. But it's just giving the lines of evidence for the beginning of the universe. So if you would please open your Little Atheist book to page 24. We're going to walk through these emboldened questions together. You can write down answers as we talk about them. And then we'll do a couple of the equip, and then I'll give you time to work on your own. We'll go through equip number 5. So we'll complete all of pages 24 and 25 in your Little Atheist book. So the first emboldened question says, what would you say to someone who asked you why you believe God exists? What would your answer be?
Right now?
Right now. So experiences of God. Okay. What else?
My favorite movies
Yeah. We'll watch that movie. Watch a couple movies this year. Yeah, and at this point in the book, it's a little hard for you to answer that with science and logic and math, but you will be able to by the end of the year. What do you suppose Albert Einstein meant when he said science without religion is lame, religion without science is blind?
without one, without
Yeah, and I think he's saying that with one without the other, they neither would be meaningful, or helpful or instructive. Um, so, um, science without religion is useless, basically, right? Because if there is a God, then we need to know that, and we need to know Him. And He is the one that reveals science. But religion without science without religion is useless. But religion without science is blind. We're just going to let's give an example of that. Remember earlier in the book it said that people used to believe that when there was an eclipse, that two wolves were pulling the sun or the moon. That's religion without science. Now they didn't know any better, and we do. But I would submit that the more we know about science, the more it helps us understand. Because who created all of this, right? Who knows it better? So yeah, I think um, I think they were meant to go hand in hand. God intended that. That's what we're doing here. Explain why it's important that Christianity is built on reason and faith. So it's not just built on faith; it's built on reason and faith.
Because when you're trying to communicate Christianity to other ways, it has to be reasonable. Because without it being reasonable, people aren't going to be a Christian because it's not reasonable. How can that make sense? You kind of know what I mean? It's like without it being logical and reasonable, then why are people going?
Right. It's just a fairy tale. Some people think it is, but our faith is built on reason as well as faith, as well as belief. We have good reason to believe. Good reason to believe. And that's what we learn throughout the show. So equip number one. What's so important about Einstein's discovery of general relativity? What did it prove? Candace? What? The universe had a beginning. The universe is not eternal. It had a beginning. And if it had a beginning, somebody had to begin it. Somebody had to create it. So if it had a beginning, it had a cause. Now at this point, because we're not through with our logical argument, we're not saying that cause is God, but we'll get there. But the first thing we need to think about is there is a cause. So there's a first cause for the universe, and then we'll start thinking what that first cause might be. What were some of the proofs in support of general relativity? So Einstein comes up with this theory of general relativity, but then others came after him that confirmed that he was correct. What was one of those? Yes. With the what?
The galaxies.
Yeah. So Edwin Hubble looked into his telescope and he saw these red shifts of light, which proved that the universe was expanding, but not just that it was expanding. It's not like expanding in all directions. It's expanding from a single point. Kind of like a firework. It comes from this one point and it expands out. Now in this case, it expands out in all directions from one point. But but it's expanding from one point. And Edwin Hubble, saw that from his telescope. Then what about Arthur Eddington's experiment? What did he do?
Experiment during the solar eclipse.
Yep. That did what?
Affirm the general relativity.
Yep. So an experiment during a solar eclipse confirmed the theory of general relativity. Okay, we're going to stop there. You're going to answer 3, 4, and 5 on your own or together as a class or in groups. And we'll go over those tomorrow. That's, other than that, that's it for today.